nothing new in the world of sales except for the history you do not know. Welcome to the Sales History Podcast, bringing the brilliant and sometimes strange minds, methods, and ideas from the sales profession's past with applications to today. Here is your host, best-selling author of The Transparency Sale and The Transparent Sales Leader, keynote speaker, trainer, and nerd, Todd Caponi.
Imagine you have invented something that you believe represents a giant leap forward in humanity. Things like the steam engine, the telegraph, the reaper, the sewing machine, the cotton gin, the incandescent light, the telephone, the automobile, the airplane. Your confidence in its potential impact has you shaking with excitement. You can't imagine anyone not seeing the new world through your eyes. Do you think that each of these advancements just sold themselves? Do you think word spread like wildfire, causing individuals and corporations to line up like a new In-N-Out burger or Chick-fil-A drive-thru? In each of these cases, not only did word not spread, but the initial selling efforts were met with fierce resistance. In each case, powerful selling techniques were required to drive interest and demand. In each case, without those powerful selling techniques, the world we live in today might look much different. Think about even the current state of artificial intelligence, AI. Many believe the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, is what it's called, has the potential to change the world in ways never thought possible. AI's promise is the reduction of errors, the ability for machines to take the risks so we don't have to save time on low-value activities, to accelerate progress on everything, even solving our most perplexing societal issues. However, many still believe it'll make us all lazy, especially the next generation, who will potentially grow up never having to do research, create rampant unemployment, and stymie improvement in creativity, since AI bases everything on that which has already been created. Even the telephone had detractors. Skeptics at the time thought it might make us all homebodies. Our societal needs would never be satisfied without ever stepping foot outside, which would crush the entertainment industry, restaurants, pubs, transportation, and so many other vital components of the industry. Does that sound familiar? Even many who used it didn't want it. In John George Jones's 1917 book, Salesmanship and Sales Management, he wrote, quote, "One of the first Chicago firms to install telephones subsequently had them removed because frequent calls from customers disturbed the clerks." Again, that was 1917 around the telephone. I mean, for every game-changing technology in the past, and for every one to come, the words of Arthur Sheldon in his 1903 book, The Science of Successful Salesmanship, have rung so true. Quote, "Every advance in every direction means a fresh demand for salesmanship." Every significant advancement tends to go through the following four stages. Right? Stage one is broad skepticism, meaning, that's a bad idea. No way that's going to work, or nobody's going to want that. And then it goes to stage two, which is guarded optimism. You know what a good use for that is? X. Or it's going to help, but it's not a game changer or anything. And then it suddenly goes to stage three, which is broad optimism. Wow, this new thing is really going to help here, here, and over here. And then what happens? Well, stage four is what I like to call put that shit in everything, or bubble-making optimism. And then the bubble bursts, and then off we go again. But progressing from stage one to stage three requires selling at its core, and as such has made for some incredible stories of Herculean sales efforts. In the 1955 revised edition of the book Salesmanship, Principles and Methods, authors Carlton Peterson and Milburn Wright point out a few of these stories. I read it, I found them fascinating, I dug in, and I want to tell you a bunch of those stories. So let's set the stage. When the United States won its independence in 1776, the population of the United States was still a little under 3 million people. And given that everything by which your survival depended, approximately 75% of those individuals were focused on agriculture. New York City's population today is a little over 8 million people, so almost 3 times the size of the entire United States back then. But in 1776, it was already the second largest city in the United States behind Philadelphia, but it only had 21,000 people. I mean, Manhattan itself was largely farmland. The primary means of getting around was by horse. Your family was mostly self-sufficient. Your home's heating, lighting, sanitary services, etc., they were poor by today's standards. Not too many people had any form of education beyond the learn-by-doing way that happened naturally. You worked from sunrise to sunset every day. Mass production was just an idea, not having begun until it was used in building up the army around 1800. There wasn't much variety in anything you owned either. The difference between now and 250 or so years ago is truly mind-blowing, created through a combination of a free enterprise system, education, and imaginative selling. While there have been recessions, depressions, wars, hardships, the progress and productivity here in America was really unmatched anywhere and still at any time. None of this unmatched progress could have happened without the salespeople who brought knowledge and understanding of new products and services to potential customers on farms, in the factories and mills, and individual homes. Every product that has been developed also had to be sold. The ultimate sale has become the measure of the success of every enterprise, from the mine or farm to the travel bureau. The ultimate sale is the incentive for the discovery of oil, the efficient layout of the factory, and the reduction of costs of extraction, conversion, and distribution. It is the all-powerful governor of the levels of profits, investments, production, and employment. If there is no sale, there is no job. End quote. That is from Alexander Herron in his 1954 book, No Sale, No Job. Couple of pieces there. Quote, the ultimate sale is the incentive and the, quote, all-powerful governor of the levels of profits, investments, production, and employment, end quote. The greatest inventions and advancements needed more than the ingenuity to contrive and configure the solution, but the skill and the will to go out and sell it too. First, let's talk about James Watt and the steam engine. In 1790, James Watt was ready to sell his new steam engine idea to the world. While stressing the key features his prospective customers would want, he also theorized the need to associate value with those features, almost like ROI, return on investment. How? Well, James Watt calculated how much work a horse on a farm could do in 1 hour. And then he added a safety factor, which came out to a value of 550 foot-pounds per second. He called this 1 horsepower. Amazingly, it not only helped him sell the steam engine, but that measure is still used today as the measure used in selling cars, engines, rockets, and all other sorts of machinery. Going forward to Cyrus McCormick and his invention of the reaper. I mean, the reaper, it sounds like something used in a horror movie, right? But as you probably know, it's a piece of machinery that cuts grain. When Cyrus McCormick invented it back in 1831, he demonstrated it to farmers. They were all highly skeptical and largely unimpressed. He took it to an English market and presented his reaper at a public exhibition. The London Times newspaper was there and they ridiculed it, describing it as a cross between an Astley Carist. I don't know what that is. I looked, I'm not sure. But again, a cross between an Astley Carist, a wheelbarrow, and a flying machine. I know that just wasn't good, right? McCormick never lost his persistence. That invention eventually raised the status of farmers from peasant to prosperous business person. It was the forerunner of the millions of labor-saving machines that have been produced and sold to farmers all over the world. If it wasn't for the selling job Cyrus McCormick did to an uninformed and highly suspicious public, who knows where we would be today? Gustavus Swift, he was the inventor of refrigerated train cars. And he realized that the meatpacking industry could be revolutionized by perfecting refrigerated train cars. So beef and other meat could be cut up and shipped instead of having to ship the cattle, which was always the way forever. He, along with the help of engineer Andrew Chase, invented the ice-cooled rail car in 1878. Now, the big problem here is that everyone had already made significant investments in cattle cars. Now you're asking them to dump that, buy these refrigerated train cars? That took some serious selling. In the 1955 book that I mentioned before, it mentioned that Swift and Company at that time had 78,000 employees and $2.5 billion in sales. That's 1953. That's a huge number in today's world. George Westinghouse and his invention of the air brake. I mean, think back to the 1700s and 1800s. If you were driving a train and you wanted to stop it, power would have to be cut to the entire train first, and then the conductor would have to manually set the brakes and literally run from car to do it. George Westinghouse was trying to figure out a better way. He was reading a magazine, of all things, called Living Age, which had a picture of the construction of a tunnel between France and Switzerland. They were using compressed air to tunnel under the Alps. He looked at that and figured, wait, I could take that idea and apply it to the axles of train cars. He figured it out. It's a significant problem, right? Braking a train safely. And this was a simple solution. I mean, you'd think that that would be an easy sell, right? Turns out the opposite was true. Westinghouse hit resistance in every conversation. He realized he needed a better way to demonstrate the solution. I mean, he spoke of the concept, but while interesting to many, without proof, no one was willing to be the pilot project on this. So he focused his selling efforts on raising investment, almost like a seed stage startup today, so he could install the equipment in a 4-car train. His first live demonstration on his new 4-car train that had this installed was to the officials in charge of motive power for the Pennsylvania Railroad. The demonstration and selling techniques were so effective that several individuals, as a part of those officials, they became directors in his new company, the Westinghouse Air Brake Company. Westinghouse spent most of his years from 1869 to the 1880s selling throughout America and then throughout Europe. While a great inventor, he had to be an even better salesperson. Over 140 years later, Westinghouse, which was most recently called Wabco Holdings, sold to another organization for $7 billion in 2020. How about Harvey Firestone and the development of highways? I mean, you might associate Firestone with tires, but Harvey Firestone had an unusual ability to sell an idea and was the core individual responsible for selling a skeptical public on the value of highways, especially for long-distance truck shipments. Highways, the things you drive on today without a second thought, face considerable resistance. Starting out in Akron, Ohio, Firestone sent a fleet of loaded trucks on a tour of the South. As the fleet arrived in a town, he made sure local journalists were there to help spread the news. And each stop, quote, provided an opportunity for an open-air lecture on the operating cost of a 3.5-ton truck, end quote. It was pure promotional selling. In the end, his efforts created thousands of jobs in trucking and transportation, sped up the building of better public highways, and sold a lot of tires too. And today, Firestone Holdings is generating over $7 billion in revenue each year. How about J.C. Penney's retail success? I love his name, J.C. Penney. When you think about a J.C. Penney store, did you know his name was actually James Cash Penney? That middle name is awesome, right? James Cash Penney. Well, he wanted to open a store. He was in Kemmerer, Wyoming, and working with a local banker who was strongly advising him not to do it. He ignored the banker, and in 1902 rented a vacant building. To make ends meet, he lived in its attic with his wife and 1-year-old baby, built his own shelves, selected what to sell based on the local community. He opened on April 14, 1902. And on that first day, he had sales of $466.59. That proved his concept would work. Now, that might not sound like a lot of money, but in today's dollars, that would be almost $17,000. Penny sold behind the counter himself and, quote, considered it a sin if anyone came into the store without being waited on. He also, quote, considered it a greater sin if anyone went out without making a purchase. J.C. Penney was one of the most prominent retailers for many years, the largest retailer in the world up through the 1950s, and still had over 1,000 stores and over $14 billion in revenue just 22 years ago, around the beginning of the 2000s. How about Henry Ford and the automobile? I mean, just imagine if Henry Ford had listened to his boss. Ford, while pioneering what he called a, quote, workable horseless carriage powered by gasoline, was working for a guy named Alex Dow. Dow derided Ford, referring to his work as a, quote, foolish obsession. Ford had the opportunity to discuss his new product with Thomas Edison. Edison is said to have told Ford, quote, young man, that's the thing. You have it. The self-contained unit carrying its own fuel with it? Keep at it. That was all the inspiration Ford needed to keep selling. He made his first sale to Charles Ainsley of Detroit for $200. Ford was quoted as saying, quote, this was my first sale. I had built the car not to sell, but to experiment with. I wanted to start another car. Ainsley wanted to buy. I could use the money, and we had no trouble agreeing on a price. Henry Ford's sales philosophy was simple. Quote, it is not good business unless both buyer and seller gain by it, and it being the sale. The original foundation of the sales profession was a design based on providing a service. The positive sales philosophies like Ford's, Penny's, Firestone's, Westinghouse's, Swift's, McCormick's, Watt's, and the countless others that went along with it proved that fact, having created millions of jobs and providing the lifeblood of the way we live today. As Dwight D. Eisenhower said while president on March 9, 1954, quote, the salesman has long played an important role in achieving and maintaining the prosperity of this nation. Through his skill, he has stimulated even greater production of commodities, and through this production, millions of new jobs have been created. Again, that was President Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1954. If you invent it, you had better be prepared to sell it too. Because as Alexander Herron said, no sale, no job. I hope you could feel my passion around this one today. I've done a lot of episodes, but this one was really a joy to research and to share these stories. Because so often, I even hear startup founders that have got this great idea, and then they look and think, oh my gosh, I have to go sell this? Do I need a plaid jacket and some gold chains? Maybe I should hire somebody to sell it. No. When you look at these core stories and these core technologies that have brought such change and such revolution to the economy and the way that we live, it's required that individual with their passion and their ingenuity to not only develop the solutions, but to bring them to light through their selling efforts. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. As always, I so appreciate you giving this a listen. Please share it if you got some value from it. You think others might enjoy it too. Leave a review wherever you heard it. And until next time, thanks again.